before starting, or should I just go ahead in the interest of time?
Yeah, you should start because we already lost. Yeah, we already lost 10 minutes.
Yeah. Great. Okay, I'll start. Hi everyone. My name is Christian. I am the product lead at StakerDAO. Jonas is actually doing another presentation, so we decided to attack both fronts. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about StakerDAO and what exactly is that we're doing. And so what I'm going to be presenting is essentially our pitch deck that we kind of put forward, but we wanted to share it with the rest of the community. And so, as I kind of mentioned, I'm the operations/product team lead. Before crypto, I was previously in traditional finance, and I was out in New York working at Deutsche Bank, specifically within research. I got into crypto a couple of years ago when I was looking for a role in research at a bank. But I connected with other individuals in the space who were also in research at a traditional bank, but had moved full-time into crypto. These were people who are now at Blockchain Capital and Polychain Capital. But that's kind of how I got my start into the space. In terms of Jonas, he's had a long entrepreneurial background, but he got his start in the space really around late 2016, early 2017, when he got hold of the Tezos white paper. From there, he really started to build a lot around community efforts, started to dig into how he could be more involved. And ultimately, when mainnet launched, he went live with his Tezos Capital Baker, which is the validator. And it grew to be essentially the largest validator in the space. I think to this point still remains the largest US public validator, but obviously other exchanges have kind of come into the space now and overshadowed that. The last person we have here on our page is Pat Ellison, who is our legal and compliance lead. He has a long background being at big firms in the legal space. And we've also had some other newcomers, but unfortunately we don't have them on the slide here. Great, so let me kind of talk about StakerDAO and the thesis that we have. I think for all of us here in this house, we have a similar kind of thesis about the future. The first one is pretty simple, and that's just that all financial assets will be put on blockchains. We think that this improves liquidity. We think it's easier for people all over the world to essentially have participation across. And so that's our point. That's a little bit more controversial, but I think everyone here is aligned. And so what is StakerDAO? StakerDAO is a platform for governing financial assets, essentially. And so what you can kind of think about, and the analogy that I'll come back to, is that we are somewhat of a decentralized Fidelity or Vanguard, if you'd like to think about it that way, kind of like an asset manager. And so two of the projects we really built on top of was one, StakerDAO, one, Tezos for its governance model, and two, Maker. And so Maker kind of has a two-token model or a multi-token model. This is similar to our model. And so we have Staker, which is a security. It's fully registered as such and is compliant. And Staker is essentially equity. It's where the value accrues. But really the focus there is around governance. And so Staker is built on the Tezos network. We launched the contract on the mainnet on January 1st. And we've had essentially 3 proposals to go through it based on each month. And I'll get into that very quickly. And the first financial product or economic asset that we're launching is called Blend. Blend is a basket of proof-of-stake tokens. It's going to be on the Ethereum network, but I'll dive deeper into that too in the next slide. But first, let me go deeper into Staker. As I mentioned, Staker is on the Tezos mainnet, and essentially it has 2 functions to play as a Staker token holder. There's really an emphasis around governance. And what we kind of learned from MakerDAO is that direct participation is very difficult to essentially have all voters vote on every issue, sometimes on an ad hoc basis. And so we thought this model would be better, where you essentially have your representatives vote in your best interest. And so again, we come together once a year to vote for that council. The second responsibility that Staker token holders have is essentially to work with the operations team that I lead to come up with proposals. These proposals can be something like launching a new asset like Blend, or it can be potentially changing some aspect of that asset, right? And so our governance process runs 12 times a year. It's a monthly process, and essentially there are 4 cycles. In the first week, we have the proposal submission phase. In the second week, we have a discussion and debate. The third week is voting by the council. And the fourth week, we have essentially implementation of the Staker token. And so really, it's in the best interest of the Staker token holders to essentially participate in the governance of the system, because this is where the value will accrue from the economic products that we launch. And so what exactly are we launching? For the first product that we're launching, we're essentially thinking about proof of stake. We think that there's going to be an early majority that's coming into the space that maybe has a position in something like Bitcoin or ETH, but slowly will seek to find a position in the assets that exist in the proof of stake industry. But right now, that's very difficult compared to having a position in Bitcoin. There's so many proof of stake tokens, so you have to keep up with everyone and do your individual research on all of those. You have to essentially do validator research if you're not validating yourself in terms of where to delegate to and manage all these appropriate wallets and nodes. And so that process is very difficult. And so when we talk about Blend, the way we like to think about it is we want to create essentially the easiest way to go long proof of stake. And so kind of the model we have here in our graphic is that we are working with CoinList. We're finalizing a contract with them to launch Blend. Blend will essentially have a supply cap of 50 million tokens sold at $1 a piece. All of the funds that we generate in the CoinList sale will go into an underlying basket of proof of stake tokens. Right now, that basket has Cosmos, Tezos, and Algorand. And then those tokens are essentially delegated to selected validators. And so let me stop right there and say that part of the decision that Staker token holders have is essentially, if we sell out this 50 million on a CoinList, then we can raise the cap. That's a governance decision. If we want to change the constituents or the methodology of the basket, that's a governance decision. And the makeup of the validators is also a governance decision. And so I can start back into this graphic and say that once these validators start to generate rewards, there would be a small management fee on the rewards that flows back into the staker side in a buyback and burn model. So that's where the value accrual is, right? But the rest of the rewards are used to buy back Blend in a tender offer model. And so the way we thought about that is, rather than distributing the rewards generated to Blend holders, what we're doing there is a buyback and burn model. And so we think that could be potentially tax advantageous in certain jurisdictions. Of course, please consult your tax advisor. But this is just similar to a company doing a buyback instead of a dividend. And so Blend is really the first asset we want to get out there, but let me kind of launch into how the tokens are essentially selected, right? So initially we have a universe, which kind of screens for proof of stake assets that we want to consider. This is just a minimum market cap threshold and a threshold for volume, right? We don't want to have illiquid tokens in this portfolio. And so then, rather than just market cap weighting the basket after we've done that, we want to be a little bit intelligent about how we select assets, right? We don't want to just maybe get the top 10 proof of stake assets similar to what you might see in other indexes where, you have a lot of controversial assets. And so we have 2 inputs where we rank the assets. The first one is staking ratio, which is kind of a quality metric for us. And that's just how many tokens are essentially staked on this network, right? How much participation is on there? How much do people actually want to be involved? The other aspect is more of like a growthy factor. Essentially, how much in rewards are being generated by this token. And we think that just speaks to essentially maximizing profit. But then once we have that rank, we essentially market cap weight the basket. We get the top 3 tokens, and there's a monthly rebalance. And so we think that once Polkadot comes online, that will be included into our basket. Once ETH2 comes online, we expect to see that within our asset as well. And let me dive into kind of the overall vision, right? So I think our goal is to essentially have $1 billion in assets under management by 2021. We think it's an ambitious goal, but we think we're going to get there. And I think we have to essentially get there if we really want to prove out the space with kind of the family offices and more institutional kind of players in the space. And so this is kind of just a model of how we think the token might trade. Obviously, it'll vary once we start to generate this kind of AUM and potentially profit or value accrual. But if we have $1 billion out in Blend assets, let's say for the sake of an example, and you kind of think about it as like a 10% yield or reward that you're generating, that's 100 million in gross revenue, what we're calling. If there's a 20% fee, which we think is competitive with other crypto projects on the rewards, then essentially we're taking 20 million that goes to the staker side. This is essentially used to buy back and burn staker. And so if you kind of think about it and you apply some multiple, maybe of 25x, you get like a 500 million market cap divided by our fixed supply. It tells you the price per token, right? We have Maker here on the right side, kind of just as a comparable. Maker's a little bit more liquid, and the situation has obviously changed in the last couple of days as we've all kind of endured this bloodbath, but it's an example that we wanted to put forward. And so the overall vision is what I wanted to come back to, really around this decentralized Fidelity or Vanguard, right? Blend is the first asset that we want to launch, but our intention is to kind of move into this quarterly pace of launching assets, right? So we have a particular affinity for proof of stake, and so we have Blend first, but maybe we can do a small cap network proof of stake basket. Maybe we can do one that's region specific to something like Asia, but outside of that, we think we could launch on something like NFTs, an NFT basket essentially, or maybe just a basket that looks at every token out there and maximizes profit across something like synthetic or Chainlink. I think we have a particular interest in the Tezos ecosystem, and so really building DeFi out there. And so stuff we're looking at also includes liquid staking and stable coins. But over time, the grand vision, again, is to kind of have real world assets launching within a blockchain and kind of being able to be the place where those assets can launch. So Staker being this well-known brand where investors can come and essentially find the product that they'd like to invest in, right? And so this is kind of the roadmap that we have. We were seeded by Polychain in the summer of last year. We moved very quickly to essentially announce our project and get our contracts up on the mainnet. In January, we had our first proposal, which was to essentially launch Staker Council and establish the beginnings of our council. In February, we put forward the Blend proposal, and it was subsequently approved. And in this March proposal period, we essentially put in a fee structure for Blend. But in terms of the council right now, we have some great council members. We have Jonas, obviously, from StakerDAO. We have Olaf from Polychain. We have Luke Youngblood, who's a senior engineer over at Coinbase Custody. We have Spencer with DTC Cap out in Florida. And then we have Shishat Todi with Lemnis Cap. And they're all great partners that we're really interested in having in this round. But I think that's the majority of StakerDAO. Just in the interest of time, I wanted to move quickly through that, but please let me know if you have any questions. I'll stop sharing my screen, but if anything comes up, I can loop it back in. Sorry, how do I let people speak if they'd like to?